Hey everyone, Sparrow here. Today we are looking at my longest build yet. I think it took about 18 hours to scrape this all together. A lot of back and forth on certain items, such as this vehicle access to the back of the habitat, as well as many other things that probably didn't make it into the video because it would be way too long, and it's the longest video so far as it is. So yeah, we are starting with some terraforming and laying down paths to make sure the animals, especially the moose, can be delivered to this habitat. I did turn the tunneling option on with the paths to make this easier to do, and I filled in a lot of that space with rocks and concrete to make it seem like it was a man-made tunnel that wouldn't just cave in immediately. There will still be earth and planting on top, which is the terraforming I'm doing right now. With one path going over the other, I had to be careful that it wasn't auto-snapping to the wrong path, and also had to move the level of the guest path up so that the road would make it all the way to the habitat. I started building the bridge too low and couldn't bring the asphalt all the way to the habitat edge that I had marked previously. It was an easy fix, thankfully, though I did discover later when taking screenshots that the Explore camera refuses to work for me on the upper path, and I'm thinking it's likely because there's a path just below. I made the upper path the minimum height that it had to be to work with the planetzoo system. Once the paths are in, I'm going to lay out the walls for the education center I would like to have in this corner of the habitat. Since this is a moose and beaver habitat, I wanted to theme it more heavily towards something like a log cabin, a little building you might find in the woods. Something cute and cozy. And then I redid the path along the edge because I wanted it to follow the curve of the building. As much as they are a pain to work with, I do love the curves on this education center. After trying it multiple times, I basically said good enough and left it, though we will have to find a workaround for the bit of railing that is sticking into the building. For fences in this habitat, I have a combination of the same wall that is at the top of the fox habitat with the wood beams. It flows well with the exterior of the building. Some steel mesh from the barriers menu to cover the river that flows into the habitat, as well as some tall log and mesh barriers that were inspired by my various Google searches of moose habitats. They don't necessarily need the lip at the top because, well, it's not like moose will climb the fence, and beavers are likely to try to chew through it rather than climb it, but it's more of a precaution against guests trying to throw anything into the habitat, because that wouldn't be good for our animals. No climbing moose for us, but while moose can't climb, they can apparently swim really well, which is one of the reasons why the water feature in this habitat is quite big. They can swim for up to 10 miles or 16 kilometers, about 2 hours without stopping, and can dive up to 20 feet or 6 meters to feed on underwater plants. And they can hold their breaths for up to a minute underwater. That's absolutely wild. They're such big, chunky animals. Who would have thought they're amazing swimmers? But that is one of the reasons why moose and beavers get along, and likely why they get interspecies enrichment in planetzooo as well. Beaver dams actually help moose get to the aquatic vegetation that makes up a lot of their diet, and because moose eat mostly undergrowth and underwater plants, the beavers don't have as much competition for their own food, which is made up of mostly trees. So that is why they are in this habitat together, to simulate their relationship in the wild. Under the guest path here, I'm adding more barriers, and the section across the road will eventually be a gate. You can see the rock and concrete in the background there, did that off camera. We need to get some moose in here to measure out the shelter for them. It looks pretty massive, but the moose actually don't have enough hard shelter as it is. So I might create another run out of the habitat next to the delivery gate and put another barn over there just to make sure they're satisfied. Or not, this is Sandbox mode, so they'll be fine. To make sure the gates work for them, I modified the gates I had created for the bison and pronghorn habitat. I may go back and swap them out for the new and improved version too. Basically, there was a bar at the top of the door that allowed it to slide, but that also prevented tall animals from going through the door. So the solution was to add wheels to the bottom of the gate, which are just the LED tube end cap pieces, and then have gutters in the ground to mark a path for the door. Super easy solution and lets any type of animal walk through. I did have to make them wider for the moose to fit, but I believe that it is the largest animal we will have on this map using these backstage fences, so it was actually really nice to have a blueprint ready for this and not have to spend too much time building something entirely from scratch. It's rewarding, but so time consuming. In the back of the barn, I'm adding a water filtration system. Since there is a massive lake in this habitat, we want to make sure it's clean at all times, and I also thought it would be fun to have the pipe at the top sticking out slightly, a small educational feature for guests as they pass by on the prairie pathway to the right. So as I continue with this backstage area, I have some questions to answer. Thank you to anyone who submitted a question on last week's video or on the AMA post on my community tab. I will get through all of them in the video. They are linked to timestamps in the description if you're looking for your specific question. The first question is from Joyce. Where in Alberta do you live? I'm just southeast of Edmonton. It's the perfect mix of urban and rural, but that's also why I have animals like moose and deer nearby. They're always wandering around. So this zoo is very much home turf. The next question from Llama7763 is, what is your favorite animal? This is a tough one. There are so many amazing animals out there. I would probably say elephants, though. I've always felt drawn to them. They're such gentle giants and they're scared of the smallest things like mice and bees. I find that so funny. Their amazing memory is definitely a feature I'm drawn to. I have a stupid memory for all kinds of weird things. Elephants also remind me of my mom. She collects those elephant statues with their trunks raised, which is supposed to give good luck. And from Kelly Eveningstorm, check out her channel if you haven't already. She does amazing work. Will you build a zoo in each biome? Yes, I started True North Sanctuary as part of a larger project where I will be building 6 zoos, each in a different biome. This one is obviously North American taiga, but I also have plans for a canyon wildlife park in Mexico or Central America, an African safari-style zoo, a tropical garden zoo in Asia, an eco zoo in Australia, and a city zoo in Europe. These plans may still change, but I do hope to get through all of them eventually. We're going to take a quick break just to chat about this room back here, which is the beaver backstage area, adding lots of branches to make the beavers feel at home, and there's also a window that the zookeepers can observe them from. It'll be a private space for them if it gets too cold outside. Back to questions. From Tara White 24, what do you personally find challenging to build in planetzooo? Paths, roofs, water features. Oh, and climbing frames. Paths and water because of the way they work in game. I'm still learning how to work with them in a way that makes them feel more natural and not just slapped down. Roofs because I have a hard time with angles up in the air. This has been mentioned a few times where working with 2 rotations at the same time just isn't my thing. And climbing frames fall under that as well because they have to be vertical because, well, they're climbing frames. So my brain likes things to be very organized and grid-like, but climbing frames look a lot better when they seem more random, which is another challenge. And a follow-up question from planetzoo fan, can you give tips on custom climbing frames? Now, since this is something I struggle with, these tips are not going to be particularly advanced, but I try to use items from both the habitat menu and the construction menu. Just make sure they have the climbable tag and that climbing is enabled on them. This gives you more pieces to work with. I usually build a starting platform first and then add any horizontal or diagonal pieces. So this could be branches, thin logs, ropes, vines, whatever you like, and then place the connecting platform or tree or whatever at the other end, because it's easier to place something at the end of the connecting piece rather than trying to get the connecting piece to line up perfectly with both ends. Also, try to have many different levels for visual interest, and turn angle snap off when building climbing frames because it's just going to make your life hard and frustrating. Angle snap is, however, great for when you're creating something like these barn doors. I went with a mix of wood and the corrugated iron lined with the metal beams. I started off with covering the entire entrance with the pieces I wanted, but after finding the midway point and constructing one door, it's easier to delete the other half and just copy over the finished side. So even though it takes more upfront time, it does make things more precise. I used to be very resistant to the idea of placing pieces that I would be deleting afterwards anyway, but turns out they're great measuring tools. I highly recommend this technique. A lot of the more technical builders like PS Vision Gaming, for example, use that trick. Also going to add a big handle to either side and then a track up top that the doors can slide along to open and close. And while that happens, last round of questions from Maya. Do you have any pets and what animal is coming next? I do have pets. I have 3 cats. One of them is all black, one is tuxedo, and the last one is a tortoiseshell. As for what animal is coming next, this is a bit of a spoiler, so hit mute until 10 minutes 20 seconds if you're not interested. The last addition to the woodland walk is going to be butterflies. After that, it's on to the other sections of the zoo, which are focused on mountain terrain and the colder regions of Canada. Think wolves, bears, reindeer, and more. From Yellow Pangolin, do you plan to use mods in the future? The answer is maybe. The first mods would likely be quality of life improvements, such as the Freebuild mod or planetzooo Plus. But once Frontier stops releasing new DLC, there's a pretty big chance I'll look into animal mods as well. It's hard to go back once you start adding mods, I think, especially the quality of life improvement ones, or the remasters of older animals. They're just so pretty. And from Jordan, do you play Planet Coaster? No, not at the moment. The last roller coaster game I played was Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, but I was just never as into it as I was Zoo Tycoon 2. I have a special love for animals, which is probably why I'm more drawn to PlanetZoo over Planet Coaster. But hey, maybe someday. Thanks again to anyone who submitted questions. It was lots of fun to answer them all, and I'm sure we'll do this again sometime if you have more. So make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And while you're at it, liking this video helps me know I'm doing something right, so please do that too. Jumping over to the other side of the habitat, we are going to make a big viewing window so guests can see the moose and beavers up close. I mentioned this in my D&D video. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure to check out the link at the top of the screen. But I realized you can make copying non-grid elements easier for yourself by selecting them along a grid prop when duplicating. So I'm working on this first wall and getting it exactly how I want it with all of the beams and glass and lining things up as perfectly as possible, before selecting them all, hitting Z to rotate, and sliding it in place with a single click. That easy, but again, high upfront cost. The good old do things properly the first time around to save yourself time from fixing it later. And then we'll have to do the curved wall on its own with a bunch of small logs and beams rotated around the edge to make it appear curved. Around the exterior, we're going to put down some rocks and then add a perimeter of logs to make sure the moose can't get right up to the glass. The beavers are much smaller, however, so we're also going to put down some hot grass right under the window to deter them from coming too close. This hot grass I just made out of grassland poles. I've seen Patrick Kamak use it in his videos. I believe he also recently uploaded his hot grass to the workshop if you want it for yourself. Inside the lodge, I'm making a custom railing using more of the log pieces, painted wood beams, and the grassland pole. Basically modeling the custom railing off of this in-game railing. Sometimes it's easier to use them as a template because you get the height correct right away instead of having to guess. And all of the rotations are much easier to do as well because you have a placeholder to go off of. That's probably the biggest takeaway from this episode. Use placeholders to help you. You can always delete things afterwards. And if you create things in sections and group them together, it's quite easy to move your complete group around to fill in the gaps. As mentioned earlier, we are now going to cover up this railing that is sticking through the wall into the education center. I'm so excited to show you guys what I put up here in the walkthrough tour at the end of the video. A lot of you really liked the informal tutorial on building a dome in last week's episode, so this week we are building a little beaver lodge to go in the education center. Now it's nowhere near perfect and I wouldn't put this in the habitat, but for an educational prop I think it works just fine. The circle on the ground is just to figure out how large the base should be. I'm starting by building a section of the lodge with a branch and a bunch of the white birch pieces. Once I'm satisfied with that, I'll copy and rotate it across the circle, and then I'll group both of those together and spin them around until I have my dome. This time I do have to do some editing to create an entrance into the lodge, so delete a few pieces, rotate a few, whatever looks good in the moment. Then we need to cover the top with some branches. So I'll start with adding larger ones to span the entire top, then some slightly smaller ones that I will again rotate around the circle, and then some even smaller ones to fill in the gaps. Then to help it look less symmetrical, same thing. Delete, rotate, move, and so on until you're happy with the outcome. For a much more in-depth tutorial, check out ZSH Plays. He's got a great tutorial on beaver lodges specifically. Instead of building a beaver lodge for the beavers, we're going to give them this beaver pool enrichment item so they can build one themselves. Now, I did originally want the pool to be connected with the lake, but there was no way to position it so it wasn't blocking the delivery access or the barn, but was still clearly visible for guests. So it is right here in front of the viewing window for maximum educational value. And it's very important for the beavers because their teeth never stop growing. Their teeth grow about 4 feet per year, which means that A, they can keep chopping wood, and B, they need to keep gnawing on wood to wear down their teeth so they're not too big for their mouths. And if you've ever seen a photo of a beaver, their teeth are actually not white. They're this yellowy orange color that looks a little bit concerning, but it's actually because their tooth enamel has iron in it to make their teeth even stronger for chewing on trees all day. Some fun facts of the day for you. Wrapping up the enrichment items with some terrain work. Could have used the path trick, I guess, and then popping a log into the center of this scratching post. When terrain painting, I tried to bring the dirt relatively close to the rock as there is already so much rock in this enclosure. And then I spread the soil across sections of the habitat that I imagine the animals to walk through, such as at the doors, by feeding areas, and around enrichment items. I caught this part of the foliage work on camera this time. I talked about this in the bison habitat, but had lost the footage. So for the base layer of grass to give the ground some texture, I'm going to make sure to align to surface and that these grass pieces are all grouped together. Then I'll place grass all around the habitat, sticking to the portions that I have terrain painted as grass. Once I'm happy with the coverage, I just exit the group and then sink it slightly into the ground. This prevents it from looking like it's floating, but also saves me time because I am not clicking shift to adjust the height of each individual piece as I'm working. I do go back and add more grass on top though if I want specific areas to look particularly full. Oops, went a little bit too low that time. Going to bring it a little bit back up. Lastly, foliage. Lots of crowberry and cowberry bushes, ferns, and of course, nettles. And then some tree protection measures on our fresh plantings. Hello, welcome to our tour. We are on the prairie pathway. Just behind us is the bison and pronghorn habitat. We have a brand new baby bison and we also have a baby pronghorn. But we are focusing on the moose and beavers today. So here is our green roof that is on top of the moose and beaver shelter. Staff access only, mostly so they can just access the air conditioning unit, and then the pipe of the water filtration system that you can see right here. But we are going to take a walk around the moose and beaver habitat. Let's see if we can... Oh, there we go. One of them's running through the bushes there, I think. So here we have the barrel feeder enrichment item to hopefully entice the moose to come over this way. And then we walk around this little green spot and we can see pretty much the entirety of the habitat from this path up here. Oh, we even have a moose. Very nice. I do like that the building isn't super obvious behind here, mostly because of the green and then the fact that it's not super tall. It blends in really nicely with the trees. Hello, friend. Such a massive animal. I would not want to be driving and see one of these on the road. Actually, a friend and I were hiking one time and we were reviewing how to get away from different wild animals. Mostly bears, but then she was like, but what if we see a moose? Which was a lot more likely because this was in the fall and most of the bears were starting to go into hibernation. So we're like, what do you do if you encounter a moose in the wild? And apparently the answer is you run. You run as fast as you can and you try to get trees in between yourself and the moose so that it slows it down a little bit, because chances are it'll stop following you once it deems you're too far for it to bother anymore. Alright, oh, and then he's in the lake, that prolific swimming that we were talking about earlier this episode. Here is the beaver pool that the beavers get to build their dam in, or lodge. And over here is our education center. But we're actually going to walk all the way around to get through the door at the top. And we even have the beaver lodge. is what I've named this education center. Because it's mostly about beavers, not as much info about the moose. But we're gonna step through here, and then there's that custom railing. And then we get a very nice view of the moose and the beavers in the lake. So we have that rubbing pillar all the way across there. Stunning views of pretty much the whole habitat from here. And then we do have our beaver pool, very visible from here as well. Now, over here is our educational portion. So we do have some benches sunken in to the rocks here for people to sit on. We also have the beaver lodge that we were building, along with the little beaver. And then here I put one of the educational items from the game, and I believe it's about different sounds that animals make, because up here, to hide that railing, I put down a bunch of different birds that you might find in moose and beaver habitats. So we have some of Mealy's owls, not Drax, Mealy's owls. I think it's a grass owl, a marsh owl, and a short-eared owl. And then we also have some of Drax's birds here. So we have the northern cardinal and the blue jay, and then some information about the different birds here. On the side, more information about trees and tree rings and identifying how old a tree is. So the more rings there are in the cross section, that means the tree is older. Just some fun informational things to do with both of these animals, really. This education center, actually, I really enjoy it when it's dark because I use these conservation lampshades, and I've never used them before, but they are just stunning. So I'm gonna turn down the lights. Yeah, they just look so nice, and I think they fit the lodge vibe as well. So this part is obviously quite lit up so that you can see all of the information at night. But here oh, hello beaver. Here we do have the beaver pool lit up with one of those standing lights that I made for the bison and pronghorn habitat. And then same with the pillar back there. And I believe there's one more on the far side with the barrel feeder. So we're gonna exit the lodge. And our pathway is actually lit up with a bunch of little pot lights all around. So if we turn this way, we do get a very nice view of the entire habitat. Oh, and we've hit the pathway underneath us, so can't go any further in explore mode, but I do think it's a very nice view of everything in the habitat. I'm gonna turn these lights back on. All right. Some nice afternoon lighting. Yeah, I mean, eventually there will be more behind here, so it won't just look like it's an empty field, but that is coming later. Over on this side, we have our vehicle access to the habitat, so we're just gonna pop down there. So we have our man-made tunnel, and then over here we do have the gates that allow us to deliver animals into this habitat. Hello, beaver. You've wandered so far to the edge of the habitat. You're just so cute. I think every animal is cute though, so. Alright, we're gonna walk through our tunnel here. I did not record this part of the speed build. They are just concrete panels, and I painstakingly rotated them around the edge of the curbs of the path. Two different curves because one of them is slightly smaller than the other. So that took a long time, which is mostly why I didn't make it into the video. And then as we walk out of the tunnel, we do end up taking this road all the way back to the backstage area. So we can see the parking lot in the distance there, and then that massive fence is just the big backstage area from episode 2. And here we can see the back of the greenhouses, the skunks and the raccoons. This area will get filled next time, so stay tuned for that. But we still have to see the interior of the barn. So we're gonna fly over to here because the entrance to it is in the same location as the fox backstage. So we walk through here, we have our foxes. Oh, hello! They did make an appearance. Very nice. I believe they're also expecting, so more baby foxes coming soon. And then here we have the backstage for the foxes, and this is how we get into the moose and beaver backstage. So over here is the water filtration system behind these doors. In here we have our beaver backstage. So this is where the beavers would go if it's super cold out and they can't be outside, for example. This switch here controls that far door for letting the moose in and out. This one controls this center one, and then we also have this one on the end for this first set of doors. Lots of clutter back here. Food prep table. Another wheelbarrow. Oh, actually, I'm quite excited about this. I made a bulletin board to put on the wall. So we have our clipboards, and then we also have, this is actually the exterior switch piece, it's just the back of it, so it's nice and flat, and then the hinge piece as colorful push pins that you would regularly find on these kinds of boards, so you have a collection of some extras in the corner there. And then we're gonna check out the habitat as a zookeeper, because as the owner of this zoo, I can. So we have the tree protection so that the beavers can't just chop down anything and everything in this habitat, and the moose can't just like knock it over. Oh, it's feeding time. Look at that. Hello. The moose and the beavers are named after different types of trees, or things that are tree related. So our moose are alder and aspen, and then our beavers are timber and juniper. I thought those were very fitting names for this enclosure. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way this grass turned out too. I initially posted a screenshot in one of the Discords I'm in, and the consensus was more foliage, so hopefully I achieved that in this habitat. Plenty of dirt trails that the animals walk along as well. But yes, more foliage. There's one of those lights that I was talking about too. I believe it lights up this barrel feeder over here. So yeah, that is the entire moose and beaver habitat. I am very, very happy with the way it turned out. Because around like the midway point, I was ready to just stop building this habitat and call it quits. Sorry, YouTube, no more videos from me. But yeah, again, last few hours is usually what gets everything together and makes it look very, very nice. As always, this is where we started, and this is where we are now. Thanks for tuning in to True North Sanctuary, whether it's for the first time or the 9th time. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and please do leave a comment if you're so inclined. One of my favorite parts of posting a video is getting to reply to all of you. I will be away camping again for basically the second half of August, but don't worry, I have more videos already lined up for you, so the posting schedule won't be affected in any way. Looking forward to hearing from all of you. See you next time. Bye.